Hello, Mr. Q3. We got the primary and secondary variators together with the belt, and we checked to make sure that the belt was running in the right direction. We had the P's showing on the other side. Now we know that you're a professional on this, and that really you don't need to. You probably just your arm is probably like a human torque wrench, but for us, we need to torque everything. So what Don had and what he bought, I guess it was off of eBay, was the 2002-2003 Saturn View books, and he bought all the books. And so of course the books it shows the torque setting for each individual thing. So now what we're going to be doing is torquing the secondary, which is the one with the big gear on it, to its torque setting on the back, 44 inch-pounds, and the torque setting for those 2, 4, 6 bolts is 44 inch-pounds. So we're going to be doing that right now.
I will alternate them.
And once he torques all this up here,
let me get them all tight first.
we'll get them all tight, and once he torques them all, then we'll go on to the second step, which would be the primary variator. Okay, so now we're going to get ready to tighten up this bolt on the back of the primary variator, the one that has the shaft and the 6 mm metal drill bit modification. There wasn't a torque specification for this bolt that we can find in the book, but so we're just going to do what Mr. Q3 did and just give it a good tighten.
Here's the size of the socket you're going to need.
The size of the socket is 1 13/16. I'm sure that it's a millimeter, but what we did, we went to the auto parts store, and this was the closest one that they had available, and it seemed to work out okay. So we're just going to give it a good tighten.
Give it a good tight. Not over tight.
That's it. And we think that's what Mr. Q3 gave was about that much of a shot. So now we're going to go and put on the plate. Of course, you know, we marked it just like he marked it.
Right there.
Right there. So we'll know exactly which side is up and which side is down. And the torque specification for those 3 bolts are
8 foot-pounds.
8 foot-pounds.
Or 8 times 12, 96 inch-pounds.
96 inch-pounds, since our torque wrench doesn't start to about 20 foot-pounds. So that's what our next step is going to be, is torquing those.
So it could be 96 inch-pounds.
96 inch-pounds. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and demonstrate the torquing of those 3 bolts, and it's going to be 96 inch-pounds or 8 foot-pounds. The book calls for 8 foot-pounds, but in order to make that conversion to inch-pounds, it would be 8 times 12 inch-pounds, so it would come out to 96 inch-pounds. So we're going to torque those 3.
That's just not
not a whole lot.
It's not a whole lot. Right there. I'll double check them. Not a whole bunch of pressure.
Okay, what I haven't mentioned, of course, Mr. Q3 mentioned, was the size of those nuts.
8 mm.
That's an 8 mm,
And these are 10.
and these are 10 mm. And so as we start reassembling this, we'll stop and do the video on what the torque specifications are.
If we could find them.
You know, if we can have it. Like I said, we have the book, and you have to go to the individual item to find it. It's not like a list of torque specifications on one page. You actually have to go to that particular page of that listing of that particular item in order to find the torque setting. But so far it's just these 2 right here, and as we start assembling, we'll stop and we'll video as the torque settings come up. Okay, what Mr. Q3 says in his videos is that you're going to make sure that you get that O-ring put back in there, and you can hold that in with petroleum jelly or Vaseline. Also, make sure that you get that O-ring placed in there. This is for the secondary variator. And also for the primary variator, you can see there's a O-ring here. And also to make sure this is clean and you get that O-ring installed there, because it says if you don't get those O-rings installed, you either have leaks or you won't have shifting. So we're going to check those out. And so when we get ready to put the bolts and everything and get ready to torque it, I'll get back with you. Okay, for the secondary variator, the back plate, it calls for 8 foot-pounds, or when you convert it over to inch-pounds, it's 96 inch-pounds, because our torque wrench minimum is 20 foot-pounds. So we have a inch torque wrench, so we're setting it for 96 inch-pounds, and that is for the secondary variator cover plate. Okay, there goes the 96 inch-pounds. 96. 96.
All 96.
All 96. Re-verify.
This is a 10 mm.
And the bolts are 10 mm. I think Mr. Q mentioned that. So that is the secondary. That's the one with the gear on it. Secondary variator cover plate. And now we're going to be going on to the primary variator cover plate. Okay, now we're going to be torquing down the cover plate for the primary variator, and there's 4 bolts, and it's going to be torqued to 96 inch-pounds or 8 foot-pounds. And the socket size is a 10
mm.
10 millimeter, and it's 4 bolts. And there you have it. And so we'll film again once we get to our next item that needs to be torqued down. Hello, it's Q3, and you're right. Putting on the variators on that case was a chore, and we got it down flat, and it took a little while to wiggle that thing in there.
Well, we got it.
But we finally got it in there, as you can see over here next to this guide pin. It's all nice and tight, nice and snug. And so we're going to get ready to torque that front part. Let's see if I can find the book.
There's the book right here.
Yeah, we got the book right here. Anyways, we got the book and showing what the torque sequence is. And the torque sequence, let's see if I can bring it up in here, is right here for that back cover plate, and that's what we're going to be torquing the according to that spec there. And here it says right here the torque cover bolts is 21 foot-pounds. And so what we're going to do is going to be putting in the bolts and running them in sequentially according to this little chart here, and we'll get back to you. Okay, so we got the 21 foot-pounds done for the top cover there that holds the variator assembly in there. And we're just going to go through and just re-verify, and we're not going to go into the sequence that we did it. We're just going to go around and make sure that we get that 21 pounds on all the bolts. again, we were just reconfirming that all those bolts were torqued, because we did torque it sequentially according to the book of the sequences of what it should be at 21 foot-pounds. And see you on the next torque. Okay, so we're on our next torque, and that would be the fluid pump. It's being torqued down to 96 inch-pounds or 8 foot-pounds according to the manual. And so that's 2 bolts that are holding in the fluid pump. And it's a double check on that, so we're good to go. Now here we are, we're assembling the timing chain cover.
Well, no, it's the drive socket. And right here. Right here, it's drive, sprocket, and
it's actually the the chain, the timing chain that moves the hydraulic pump here. Anyways, we're putting down on these 2 bolts here, which are going to be,
this one here.
this is going to be torqued to 96 inch-pounds or 8 foot-pounds.
1, 2, and then
Then we have a small one here. We'll have to check and see what that torque setting is on.
also
that
the
one.
same.
Also the same. So we have 3 that are going to be torqued to 96 inch-pounds or 8 foot-pounds. Okay, so we put the torque converter cover assembly together.
Bell housing, I think, also.
I think it's also called a bell housing, which is this piece going on to the main variator assembly. So these bolts here, which encompasses
24.
20, I think it says it was 24, 28 bolts, and those are going to be torqued at a sequence at 27 foot-pounds or 28 NMs, depending on which torque wrench you have. And there's a torquing sequence which is located right here, and this is in the book of the Saturn View transmission. So I'll leave it on here for a second for if you're interested in those torque sequence. Then that would be there if I can keep my hand from shaking. And then again, torque sequence and the foot-pounds, and the sequence is listed right there. And again, that's for the torque converter housing assembly. Those are the bolts that go around here, and also the bolts on the inside. Okay, we've put back in the valve body assembly, and what Don's doing right now is just retightening up these bolts around here, because when we're putting one of the bolts in, this is a hard plastic with a piece of metal on the inside here, so you cannot get that bolt in unless you loosen these other bolts up in order to move it a little bit, in order to slide that in there. Now on these bolts here, those have a 3 torque sequence. The 3 silver ones only have a 1 torque sequence. So I'm going to show you that in the book on the different torque settings. Now on the silver ones, the torque settings are at 71 inch-pounds, and the torquing sequence is just from right to left, number 1, number 2, number 3. And that is for 71 inch-pounds. Now on the remainder of those other ones, there's a 3 torque sequence, and I'm just stabilizing here for you can see the sequence that they have to be torqued. And when you're torquing those, there's 3 different torque settings. You got first step, second step, and third step. And those torque settings are as follows. First one is 44 inch-pounds. Second one is 89 inch-pounds. And the last one is 11 foot-pounds. And then again, there is a torquing sequence for those. And this is out of the Saturn View service manual. And that is it. We just put on the valve cover, and the valve body cover, the valve body, the valve assembly cover on.
Like a TCM or something? Transmission control module?
Yeah, something like that. Anyways, there's a torque setting on those. And it's 96 inch-pounds or 8 foot-pounds. And you're just going back around with a red robin after we just got done doing the torquing sequence, and I'll show you in the book the torquing sequence. Now this is the valve body cover bolts, and it's being torqued either 8 foot-pounds or 96 inch-pounds or 11 NMs. And here is the torquing sequence. See if I can hold this steel. And as I said, we got them all torqued, so he's just doing the round robin on there to make sure that everything is torqued.